Hi friends, welcome. This is the second exercise we are going to do about Angular data binding techniques, and in this exercise we are going to see how to call method using event binding. Moreover, in the section we are going to use template variables also. Before going to the section, I want to give a small introduction about template variables. So let's get started with template variables. We know that we have a class here, we will have a class here. In the class we can create the class level variables, and we can use the variables in the class itself, and we can access them in the template also using data binding techniques. So moreover, in this we can create template variables also. That means the variable can be created or declared in the template itself, but those variables should represent some elements here. So to create a template variable, here I'm taking an input element. I'm giving some label to this one, and I want to create some template variable for this input element. So before that I will give some more thing here. I will give some name to that lead name here. I'll give some value, default value to this one also, INDIA India here, and we can see that on our screen I have a text box here, text field here, and that has the default value India also. Now I want to create some template variable for this one, and so that I have started with hash. This hash represent the template variable for this element. So I'm giving some name here. You can give any name here, this is up to you. I given text country to this element. Now this is the template variable that represent this input element, this entire input element. Now we can access this variable here itself in the template, and we can access this variable in the class also by passing it as the argument of some function in event binding. We are going to see this one in the section. Up to now I am showing you how to access this variable here itself using expression. As it's a variable, we can use this expression syntax, that means double curly brackets, to access this variable. So what is the name of the variable? Txt country. So what I'm doing here, txt country. And one more thing here, this txt country represents this entire element but not the value of this element. We have to remember that. See, we can see the result. What it is saying, when the expression evaluated that present, that displays some value here, object html input element. That means we have to understand that this is not the value of this object, this is entire object or entire element it is representing here. And how can we access the value of this one? As it is representing the entire element, we can access the value of that one using dot, and we can say value property. We can use the value property here. This way we can access the value. And if you see it now, I will give some break also here, break and break, and this unnecessary stuff I want to delete. Okay, now we can see this is going to access the value of this element through this text txt country template variable. We can see this is this expression. When this expression is evaluated, that has displayed India, the value of this particular element. Now the same way I want to access one more property of that particular element using the template variable txt country dot a type also. What is the type of this element? The type of this element is text. Then that means we can see the type of the element here. This way we can use the template variable. We can declare template variable for particular element. Moreover, I am going to do some more thing here to see. Okay, I have taken some h1 element here, and I am giving some text in it. So to you, and this is my h1 element and I want to define or declare some template variable for this one also. So I started with hash, and I given some name as the template variable. Now this ch name variable indicates or represents the entire h1 tag here. And one more thing we have to remember here, the hash is not the part of the variable name. This is just representing that the adjacent one is the template variable. Okay, we have to remember this one. Now I want to access this one using the template variable. So ch name the template variable. Now I'm accessing the h1 element here using the template variable name that belongs to this element. Now we have to remember that one, this represents the entire element, so we cannot see any result. That means the content of that one, we can see the element here. So object html heading element, we can see this one. If you want to access the content of that one, we have to use inner text DOM property. Most of the JavaScript developers know this property very well. Inner text access the content of the element like h1 or paragraph or div or something like that. So that we can see this is evaluated here and shown the accessed the h1 element, and I have shown the value of this one here using the template variable name. This is enough as the introduction of template variables. Now we are going to enter to our exercise. As in the our exercise, we have to do something. We have to change the behavior of an element. The In this exercise we are going to make dynamic some elements attributes, not a single element. We have to not a single attribute. We are going to make dynamic several attributes of an element using event binding. Now we'll see. For that one I'm taking some input element here, that is the text field, and I will give some name to this one, and I will say it uname or username, and I will give some. Okay, up to now this is enough. We'll see the output here on our screen, on our view, and I will give some label also to this one. I'll say username, and we can see this one here on the screen. And what I will do, I will set some value, default value, sorry, size also to this one. Size, I'm using size property, and I am assigning size 60, and you can see the change here on our screen. The size of that text box is enlarged to the value 60. And what I want to give, I want to give some background style also to that one, background color. So I am using the style property here, and in this one background BSCKGROUND dash color. Okay, now we can see the output. Background color, something is wrong here. Background color, sorry, and I will give some long green. Okay, we'll see the output here. Okay, now what I have to do, I want to make the attributes or properties of this element dynamic. That means I don't want this size and style attributes static here. I want to change them in runtime. So as they are HTML properties, they cannot behave dynamic. So I am adding square brackets, and I am using them in attribute binding. And as in attribute binding, we can make them dynamic and they can behave dynamic. So here also this is a regular HTML attribute, we don't have any problem with this one. But when we are doing this one, we have some and property and value pair here. When we are doing style, when we are using style in attribute binding, we have to include this the property also, the CSS property also in the square brackets only. Then we have to keep an equal to here. There we can provide any variable here to make the value dynamic. Now we'll provide a class variable here, and here also we'll provide a class variable. Then this and those class variable receive dynamic values in runtime, and this element is going to be behave dynamic in runtime. So that I have to provide the two class variables, so I'm going to create two class variables here. I have created already. The you can see the text size property here, and you can see the bg color property here. I created variable text size here, and I am going to, and I have given some 60 value default value and light blue default value to the text bg color variable, and I am providing this variable in this attribute binding, and I'm going to provide this variable in this attribute binding, in style attribute binding here you can see, and I'm saving this, and the change will be reflected on our view why it is blue color and why the size is changed here. That is, I have given the 60 here, and I have given the light blue here to the text bg color. Those changes reflected, those variables assigned here, so that those changes reflected at our view. Now what I want to do, I want to simply assign some dynamic values to this text size variable and to this text bg color variable. So I want to create some editable element on our view to make to pass some dynamic values to this one. So first of all, I'm taking input element, and I'm going to name it input element, some size or something like this, and size or label it size. Okay, this is my first input element, and what I will do here, I will declare a template variable for this one. Just simply I started with hash, and I have given a name here sz. Okay, now sz represents this template variable for this input element. And moreover, what I want to do here, and I will give some label first, color, and I will take a select element here, and I don't want all this unnecessary stuff now here, and so in this one I will take some option, and I don't want this one also here now, and I will give red. I'll copy this one, paste, and again paste, and I will change the value to the yellow here, and I will give some orange, and I will give some white here. Okay, this is my select menu, and I want to create some other variable called I want to start with hash clr. Now I have two template variables here. One is the sz variable that representing this input element, and second one is the clr variable that's representing this select menu. Now what I want to do, I want to pass the value from this template variable to this class level variable, and one more thing, I want to pass the value from this clr variable to this class variable text bg color class variable. And we have to observe one thing here, we are passing the values from template to the class variable. This means this flow is only possible by the event binding here, so we have to perform event binding here. To for that one, I have taken a button, and I will give some label to the button, change, And what I have to do, whenever this button is clicked, whenever user clicks this button, this is going to change the value of this text size. That means this is going to assign the value of this SZ element to this text size class variable. And one more thing that is going to do, whenever click button is clicked, the value of this CLR element variable is going to be assigned to this class variable. So whenever click triggers here, that means user clicks this button, sorry, here click. What I have to do, we have to perform two statements here. We have to perform two assignments here. One is the use the text size class variable. We have to assign some value to this one. This value coming from sj template variable. For that means this template variable, and we do not have to assign the entire element, because sj representing the entire element here, so we want the value of the element only. And one more thing here, I kept a semicolon here, and I will use this variable, and I want to assign something to this variable also. So is equal to what I want to assign. I want to assign, I want to don't want to assign the entire element, I want just value of the element only. So what I will do, dot value. Now what will happen, whenever user clicks this button, immediately the text size will be assigned a value from this one, that means size element from this element, and the value of this element will be assigned to the text size. And CLR element, this element, value of this element will be assigned to this text bg color. And actually they are not going to be assigned to this here directly in the attribute binding. Instead of that one, this value is going to be assigned to this variable in the class in the memory, and this value is going to be assigned to this variable in the memory. As they are binded here also, the changes will be reflected here also immediately, and this element is going to be changed as per those changes reflected. So now we can see this one here, color, size, what is size we do not want to break here, and I will give some break here. Now what is the problem? Okay, where my select has gone from here. So what I have done with select here, first and select, and what is the label of this one, color, and the template variable for this one is color. All are missed here, why? Okay, now we can see the change will be reflected here, and I don't want break here itself. Now we'll see, and we can see the I will give some default value also to this one. Okay, no problem, I'll give some 50, and I'll do yellow. I'll change immediately, the values will be reflected here, 60 and yellow and 60 and white and 60 and orange change. This is going to be reflected here. What is happening here, actually whenever I click this one, the value of this one is assigned to the text size class variable, and the class variable is binded here also immediately. This is evaluated, and the size and the value will be assigned to the size attribute or property, and here also reflecting the same change. And now we can see we have two statements here. One is we are assigning text size, some value to the text size and some dynamic value to the text bg color also. But Angular doesn't recommends doing performing so many operations here at the event. Instead of this one, we have to call a function to perform all these operation in the class level. So what I have to do here, instead of this one, what I will do, I will call a function. I'm naming the function as change. This is my function, and I want to pass the sj variable and its value, not the variable entirely, and the value of that particular sj template variable. This is coming from this one. Okay, that means I am passing the instance of this element. And what I'm doing here, I'm taking clr dot value, and that means I'm passing the value of this select element here, and I'm calling the change function. So that I have called a change function here, we have to define the function in the class also. In the class I have defined the, I am going to define this one, and here we do not have to this one, we have to provide some jet value. You can give any name here. This is the formal argument only, and this is also formal argument. A formal argument is nothing but which is only for receiving the values from the original function call. That means whenever this change function is called, change method is called with these two values, and this is value coming from this input and this value is coming from this select. When this is called with these two values, this value, the first value will be submitted to this formal argument, and the second value will be submitted to this formal argument, and we can use those two values in this function. What I have to do, I have to assign the first value to the text size and second value to the text bg color. So what I am doing here, this dot text size, this is the class level variable. Class level variable should be used with the this in the, when we are using this variable in the class, we have to use the this keyword to use that class variable. So what I have to do, I have to assign sj value to this one, and the second variable in the class is txtbg color. So I have to assign clr value, that means this one, clr value to this one. Actually the value to this formal argument comes from this one, and value to this formal argument, the first argument from will come from this one, and those will be assigned to those these particular text size and text bg color variables, and those variables binded here. Immediately the changes reflect here, and when the changes reflect here, the size will be changed automatically, and the background also will be changed automatically dynamically in the runtime. So we can see the change here also. Whenever I'm providing some size here and I'm giving some color here and I press change, whenever I click the change button, the function will be called, change function will be called with these particular values, value of the text field and value of the select, and those will be submitted to these formal variables, and the value of those formal variables to variables are assigning to these two variables, and immediately those two variables are binded here, so values will be reflected here. As per the values reflected here, our input element is going to behave dynamic in runtime. So this is the way we can call some different functions or methods in the event binding. In the next class we are going to do some more exercise using data binding techniques. Up to now this is enough, and goodbye until the next class.